Welcome, everybody. Thank y'all so much for joining us. We're really excited to have everybody today. I'm Dr. Patricia Fulmer. I'm out of Huntsville, Alabama. Started in a medical referral center, did secondary, tertiary care there for 4 years, and then decided that I wanted to get back into private practice. So last year joined some friends in a group practice and been having a lot of fun there ever since. So I'm going to let all of our panelists introduce themselves, kind of tell you a little bit what they do and what they represent within our career, and we'll go from there.
So yeah, thanks for having us. My name is Keith Smithson. I'm in private practice outside of Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia area. It's a multiple location, multiple doctor practice, all ODs. My specialty within the practice is sports and performance vision, concussion rehab. So I guess we'll talk about that with me.
Hi, I'm Dr. Corey Hockinen. I work in industry currently, so I do product development and medical affairs for eye care companies.
My name is Dr. Chanel Young. I started off doing retail optometry for 5 years, had 2 independent subleases, and now I'm in the process of opening a whole practice.
And my name is Kristen O'Brien, Dr. Kristen O'Brien. I'm a 2013 graduate of the Michigan College of Optometry, and I started my private practice cold right out of optometry school, and currently work with a company called Eye Care Advisors that helps other young graduates open up their private practices from scratch as well.
Yeah, so a lot of talent on our panel today, a lot of things to aspire to for our students and new grads. So obviously each of you have taken a very different path in optometry. I did too. I changed my path 4 years out. What would you say, and we'll kind of go down the line on this one, is maybe the best thing about that modality of practice for you guys? For MD/OD, I think for me, if you like disease, it's a really fun way to spend your days because everything that you're seeing is something that's challenging, it's something rewarding because you're able to give either the patient relief in some way if it's something acute or painful. You give them comfort in managing a chronic condition like glaucoma. You know that you're making a difference, in their true, not only ocular health, but systemic health as well. So, and like I said, it's a challenge. Sometimes you don't know what's going to end up in your chair. So for MD/OD, I think that is probably the most fun part of that.
Yeah, so for me, I love what I do as well. I've always done this, so I kind of had a passion of marrying sports and vision when I was in college and a collegiate athlete. So for me, it was just trying to stay around the game when I was too fat and old to play myself. So it was a great opportunity to marry 2 things that I love, which was vision testing and optometry and sport vision. So for me, the greatest thing about that is really just kind of variety is the spice of life. So every day is completely different for me. It's a private practice setting, so as the sports vision doc, I would tell you just about everything I talk about during the day is sports related, regardless of the fact that it might be a concussion patient, it might be someone who's to see me for a new pair of contact lenses as a 16-year-old baseball player, someone looking for visual performance enhancement, or 85-year-old AMD patient who just wants to talk about the Nationals and how good we're going to do this year. So it's fun. It's something I love talking about. Obviously, that's why I'm sitting here. So yeah, it's a great thing to do day to day and enjoy what you do.
I think for me, I've always been very connected to the products in optometry, and as a medical branch, there isn't a lot of products in other fields, so I get excited about glasses and contact lenses and instruments, and so it's really fun for me to be on the leading edge of bringing those things to market and giving patients the best from the forefront instead of finding it afterwards.
If you graduate, you don't know what you want to do, go to retail optometry. You're going to see a lot of patients, different types of patients, healthy ones, somewhat healthy ones, really bad ones. It gets you thinking on your feet, and you also get paid doing it too. If you don't know what you want, just go out there and just work. As a first year, I worked 6-7 days. It was great money. I learned a lot. I became very efficient. I was able to communicate with various types of patients, so I can like pretty much problem solve. Some patients are you just want to kick them out, right? I know I handle that nicely, and they still give me a positive Yelp review afterwards. So that's my advice.
For me, private practice gives me flexibility to pursue my passions in whatever aspect or avenue I want to. So whether it's getting enjoyment out of being an employer and seeing people go from your high school intern to a part-time fill-in technician to being your main full-time front desk and somebody who just loves their job and their career, to being able to help patients with glasses, to be able to put in a specialty in your own private practice if you wanted to, like sports vision or specialty contact lenses or dry eye, to be able to take the products that industry has that are innovative and make the decision to bring them in. And fortunately, there's still the opportunity to make some money. So I think for me, private practice is the ability to do whatever makes you happy in whatever capacity.
agree with that 100% because that was a lot of the reason that I actually jumped back to private practice was because I missed the flexibility to be able to do all of it, to be able to see the whole patient and not just the medical part, although the medical part was really fulfilling and interesting too. So, coming out of school or as a new grad, a lot of times you don't know what you really enjoy yet. You've dabbled here, you maybe seen a couple of patients with specialty lenses or, heard about sports vision, but you have no idea really what you want to do, right? So how do you figure it out? How do you figure out that you want to be in industry or that you want to open cold? How does that work?
So for me, I think we made a couple of different examples. I think part of it was looking ahead a little bit, spending a little bit of time when you're still in school and going out and trying to visit a practice, visit a private practice close to you, go take a look at a retail location, look at a medical practice. A lot of times your rotations through your externship sites will give you that opportunity to see different modes of practice, but you don't have to make that decision that you're making for the rest of your life. It's just a starting point, right? So do what you're going to do that you're passionate about and you're excited about, and for me, discussing things from a sports vision angle is something that I think is a really nice add-on to a practice. So if you're trying to market yourself as a new grad and going out there saying, look, I may bring something to your practice that you don't have now, that's a pretty cool thing as a practitioner to say, wow, I'd love to add something to my practice when I feel pretty confident about treating things like glaucoma or AMD or dry eye, but maybe I don't have a sport vision angle yet and this person's going to bring it to me. What a cool opportunity when you're going out there marketing yourself.
And I think I want to echo both of you guys in that I also started in corporate optometry originally, and it was a great way to start. It taught me a lot. It taught me a lot of business, honestly. And that was a great jumping off point because I realized that I loved that part of it and I wanted to do more of that. And so looking ahead, I just really thought, how can I do more of this? How can I mix this up? And industry is just a really fun way to, when you want, you can change to a lens manufacturer or instrument manufacturer or something like that. And it's just a very fun way to fulfill a lot of your hopes and dreams and just kind of combine your interests.
So sometimes when you're trying to figure out what you want, you have to know what you don't want, right? So I did corporate optometry, currently have an independent sublease. Now I'm opening a private practice. So I know what I don't want, so therefore I know what I want.
For me, I made the decision to go into private practice because I did a little bit of introspective looking at myself. For anybody who knows me, I get bored fairly easily. I never say no to an opportunity, and I'm just slightly type A. So the thought of going into a corporate setting where somebody was telling me how many patients a day I was seeing and how quickly I needed to see and was giving me my staff and I had zero control over that scared the heck out of me. I want to be able to control every aspect of my day and every aspect of my life. And for other people, that is so overwhelming. They want to go into work and leave at the end of the day, and they don't want to have any of the responsibilities afterwards. And for me, that's actually what I like most about my career is that I can just change focus here and change focus there. And so I think just getting to know myself as an individual while I was in optometry school and going, exactly, this isn't what I want and that isn't what I want, so then I really fall into more of this category, is why I chose private practice.
Obviously, each of our types of practice has some challenges with it. It's like you said, it's really intimidating for some people to come out, not only go into private practice, but open cold. How do you overcome some of those, look in the mirror and say, I may not make $100,000 that very first day if I go this way, but I know myself and I know that's what I want. How do you overcome the challenges in your day-to-day world?
Yeah, so for me, the challenges are there. But look, if you're building something that you're excited about and passionate about, you're building a foundation that's going to keep you happy for the rest of your career. So, finding the right location and finding the right modality of practice that you really feel like fits you. You're building something that you really are excited and passionate about. And if you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work every day, right? So, for me, I've been fortunate to be able to do that. And I really, again, I just love what I do. It's a great opportunity to do something every day. It's a whole heck of a lot of fun for me.
I think one of the biggest challenges of industry is finding a full-time job in industry. Like, how many lectures have you been to where they have their disclosures at the beginning and they work for 18 different companies or more? Like, they're not doing it full-time. They're doing it like once a year or something like that. So I think finding that job full-time is difficult. And so the challenge is really being scrappy. So if it's something that you really enjoy, you don't really care if you're being scrappy and you have to be selective and just keep at it. But you have to build up your skill set so that you can develop something that makes you marketable, maybe over another OD or just in a field that doesn't have ODs currently, and then keep at it that way.
Yeah, I think the common theme is as long as you're passionate about what you do and you're honest to yourself and to your patients, that fear of looking in the mirror is very minimal to what your vision of what your practice modality want to be. So again, just being honest to yourself, honest to your patients, just being a good person. That fear of looking in the mirror is like, am I going to fail? Am I going to see patients today? That's like, it's going to happen. Maybe not day one, maybe 1 month. It's going to happen as long as you're just honest and staying true to yourself.
So the thing that scares me the most about my normal day, or the thing that throws a wrench into it, is just life happening. So just on Thursday, my main biller and front desk person, who is supposed to be having her first child April 24th, texted and said, hey, I'm being sent to the emergency room because I'm having heart palpitations and my blood pressure's up too high, and they're not sure if I'm going to have to deliver prematurely. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, do I leave New York? Do I hop onto a plane? And it was super fulfilling because all of my staff members jumped on a big text message saying, nope, we're going to take her to the hospital. Don't worry about it. So-and-so's coming in on their day off. We've got it. Don't come home. And so as much as little things kind of throw a wrench in, and those are the things that I fear, it's also super rewarding to have built that team who's got your back no matter what, not just as an employer, but as a family member of your team.
From the combo practice, from the MDOD, whether it's a hospital base where you're working kind of side by side and neither one of you owns it, whether it's an MD-owned practice, it doesn't really matter. In that kind of setting, I think one of the biggest challenges and a little bit taboo saying in our world is that optometrists get put in a role of the grunt worker, or they're not valued as much in those spaces. I would argue that if you want to be valued, you can make yourself valued in that role. Make yourself set apart from everyone else, because if you go in there and you assume that, or you behave that way, then yeah, they're gonna look at you that way. But if you go in and work side by side with that surgeon, valuing yourself just as much as them, and making sure that your patients are taken care of, making sure that you're growing the practice, no matter what modality that you're in or setting that you're in, I think you can pretty easily squash that mentality pretty quick. Let's say you start in one and decide, Sean, you've decided that where you started wasn't where you wanted to finish. Corey did the same thing. How did you guys know when it was time to make that move? Was it you woke up one day and you said, hey, this has got to change, or was it a process?
It was a process. It took me about a year and a half to really just leave my first modality, corporate optometry. I think I just got tired, got bored, because my whole motto is be better than yesterday, and I feel like I reached a ceiling with that company. I went from just seeing patients to training doctors to supervising certain offices, and then I was like, I want to do more, and the only you can do more is opening your own private practice, set your own culture. That's you feel like it's missing. Then remember, I saw a lot of patients at the corporate setting, so I kind of have an idea what is missing. So one day I was like, you know what? This year, I'm going to propose, and I'm going to quit, and I'm going to open a independent sublease first to see maybe I'm a great doctor, maybe I'm not a good business person. So independent sublease allows me to do that. Low overhead, still have that business mindset because you got to do your own marketing, billing, etc.
It's a big year.
Love it.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I would say
in
that
that order too, right? Propose was first, right? Yeah, well done.
I
Very
need it for
smart
credit,
man.
so yeah.
Extra credit.
I would say for me that being in another modality first was absolutely necessary, and I wouldn't have traded it for the world. I think as high-achieving doctors and people in general, we tend to beat ourselves up if we feel we make a mistake. And it's not about the status or the end goal, it's about the journey. So I think that was very helpful to me, and similar to John here, I worked and did a lot of regional work with the company too, and it was sort of a necessary component because in the state that I was practicing, the law changed to where a lot of the regional business rules were dissolved. And so my choice was leave or go back in working in a corporate setting inside of a mall 5 days a week. And I decided that it was really important to me to pursue my other interests. So it was the right time, and I'm glad I had that experience. I still keep good connections, don't burn bridges, but it was just the right time.
I was going to add to that. You'll never feel like you're ready to leave something. You just gotta jump. Like Nike, just do it, right?
Yeah, Chris, and you jumped in a different way right out of school, opening cold. How did you navigate that, knowing yourself, but still knowing I've really got to do this if I'm going to do it?
I have to give all the credit to my mentors, to be perfectly honest with you. If you don't have a good mentor, find one. Find somebody that you can text at 11 o'clock at night and you know they're going to respond and they're not going to just give you an answer with fluff, that they're going to kill you with honesty. And I had so many of those mentors. I say in my pocket, in that I know that they cared about me and wanted the best for me and would do anything to help me be successful. And I think it's because I jumped right after optometry school and did that right away with the help of my mentors that I've been able to have other opportunities later on in my career, like speaking to the private practice clubs and starting with eye care advisors as far as consulting. And I write the Fresh Out column for optometric management. And so I don't think that any of those other opportunities that I truly enjoy doing would have been possible had I taken a different route. So I think that everybody just needs to make sure that they have a mentor or somebody else in a similar situation that they can emulate and rely on.
So let's talk money, right? Every student wants to make money when they get out. Every graduate, period, wants to make money when they get out. In your individual spaces, is that something that you can do as a new graduate? Corporate, I think a lot of times people will say if you've got student loans or you've got this or that, it's an easy paycheck, and that may or may not be true. How do you feel like in your world that they can still make a living, still pay their bills, and be able to be fulfilled doing that too?
So in my world, one of the things that I think is a selling point, and it's funny to say that, but I feel like 50 years into doing sports and performance vision, that we're still trying to sell sports vision to our colleagues. It just seems silly. We all treat athletes, we all see athletes, so sports and vision should be no different than fitting a contact lens. We should all be able to do some basic things in sport vision. It's silly that we still say that, but to me, one of the selling points of sport vision is the fact that there is a self-pay and cash pay model. That so much of what I do on a daily basis is not reimbursable through insurance. So if you're looking to survive in the managed care world, we have a private practice setting, and still the majority of what I do is health insurance based. However, we can do a standard health insurance exam, bring them back for a sports and performance exam. We can still do a standard exam or evaluation, bring them back for a binocular vision test or a concussion rehabilitation assessment. So a lot of cash pay stuff that comes out of that.
Yeah, how does the billing side of that work? When you bring them back for that sports and vision performance, evaluation, is that all out of pocket? Is that something and how do you know a fee schedule to set for that?
Yeah, so for me it is. It's out of pocket. We set a fee schedule that obviously is dependent on where you are regionally and probably a bit your specialty in that area arena. But for us, it's been very straightforward, very open and out front, and no different than mothers and dads and taking their kids to baseball training academies or a gym membership model where people are used to paying for performance in the athletic arena. And so for us, it's a very easy thing for them to understand, is that this is something that falls outside of what I remember from a comprehensive eye exam that I had before. And again, from a practitioner standpoint, if you're going to take the time and the investment and buy some of the new technologies and do things to evaluate at a higher level, you should be able to be reimbursed for that. So for us, it's cash pay.
I would say in terms of industry does compensate very well. It depends on the size of a company, much like any other company your colleagues might work at. If it's a big company, that might pay more than a startup. But at the end of the day, they're taking you away from practicing, so they need to be able to compensate for that to make up. And so right out of school, I would say it'd be probably fairly difficult to go right into industry unless it might be a startup or a smaller company. It's not impossible, but stay scrappy. Like I mentioned before, there's a lot of doctors that do very, very part-time consulting for a lot of companies. So the best way is to kind of get your foot in that door if possible, work with many different companies just a little bit here and there, continue practicing if that's not lucrative enough to step out full-time, and then have that be your side hustle, and then eventually move into full-time afterwards.
How do you find those people, though? Do you walk up to them at their booth here and say,
yes,
hey, I want to work for you?
That's one way. These conferences are great because you get to meet a lot of people, and I hate to give the answer of networking, but really networking is very helpful. applying to jobs, you probably won't find a lot of job descriptions that say like OD needed unless it's for a private practice or a corporate role, and they exist, but networking is very helpful. So reach out to the people in your network. Doctors are helpful, but meet people that aren't doctors, because a lot of times it may not be an other OD that's hiring you. It would be a product director or a marketing manager or something like that. So when you're at conferences, when you're at meetings, when you're at something with a booth of a company that you like, talk to those people, get to know them.
Guess we can all say corporate optometry pays pretty well. They have very deep pockets. Coming off as a new grad, they will pay you a good amount with incentives like you see more patients, you get bonuses. And then you get raises, and you can always climb that corporate ladder, become a territory director. So a lot of people do that, and a lot of doctors stay in that modality. It's fun because you're not only seeing patients, but you're also helping other doctors as well. I think it's a great start, because you've been undergrad 4 years, and then optometry school is go out there, have fun a little bit. Don't go too crazy. You don't need to buy a new car. Just because you're a doctor does not mean you have to drive fancy cars when you have 200K loans, right?
So would you say it's a fairly safe way to go if you're not, necessarily wanting to dive straight into private practice? It's a good way to know that you're going to have that financial security?
Yes. And going back to when you're in corporate, you go to these meetings and you get to network, right? And like, the sports vision therapy practice is hiring, and so, but at least you get to know the industry, you get some experience, and word of mouth spreads, and they're like, hey, John's really this, you should look into him. Yeah, you should make it a pay cut, but you might end up a lot happier having your own private practice.
So how about you, Kristen? Did you take home a $1 million check the day you opened your doors?
Absolutely not. So I completely agree with Chun in that don't go out and start living like you think a doctor should live. So my first year out of optometry school, opening up my private practice from scratch, I still drove my 2004 silver Taurus that had so many hail damage dents on it that my staff started calling it the silver bullet because it just looked like somebody peppered it with an assault rifle. And all of my staff drove a nicer car, so you're exactly right on that. None of them expected that. But, so to keep your expenses low, there's never an easier time to live like a student than right after optometry school, right? If you think about it, our grad plus loans are generally what all of us lived off of. So we lived off of, $10,000 a year spending. So if you keep your expenses low, make sure I lived with a roommate for my first year out of optometry school, and then thank God, lived by myself for a year before I met my husband, and never going to live by myself again. It's easiest to do that right off. It's much more difficult to go from a very comfortable living situation where you might end up having a mortgage and a car payment and other lifestyle habits that are more expensive, and then going backwards. And that's one of the things that we run into with our eye care advisor clients, is that they're so unhappy in the situation that they are in that they're willing to make those sacrifices. But it is a sacrifice, especially if you're married and have kids and have other people depending on you. But I also wouldn't say that I struggled my first year out. When you're starting your own private practice, you're building something. Like, you see the value. Yeah, it might not be as much as you wanted that first year, but after that, it was about year 2.5 to 3 that I was making far more than my optometry school friends that graduated and went into other modes of practice. So it's definitely doable. You're not going to struggle. And then from the flip side of that, as a private practice owner who has hired a new grad full-time, you're also not going to make as much as an associate versus if you're an owner, versus if you go into OD, MD, or commercial. And it really becomes, do you have that specialty that you can then say, this is how much I'm going to add to your bottom line. This is why you can afford to pay me a little bit more, and to know the metrics behind it to make yourself more valuable.
Yeah, I think that's something really important. Like we keep saying, make yourself valuable in whatever setting that you're in. MDOD financially can be a very lucrative way to go. A lot of those, kind of like corporate, a lot of them are bigger corporations or hospitals, and so they do have a little bit deeper pockets. On the flip side of that, they typically are a little more stringent on their advancement opportunities. So what you start at, you may have some negotiation in there year to year, but it's not going to be nearly the growth potential of a private practice or industry, because you can renegotiate there. Sports vision, growing, adding. Corporate maybe is a little less flexible as well, but you know what you're getting into, and you can, again, bring value, and if you bring value, always make sure that you're getting rewarded for that too. It's not a one-sided, situation. What would your biggest piece of advice be to a new graduate who may be considering, the way that you guys went, or not to consider the way that you guys went? What should they look at about themselves to know that maybe they would be a good fit for y'all's path?
So the question I get all the time is, this sounds exciting, sounds fun, sports vision sounds like something that I might want to do. How do I start? And, I think you start by liking sport. It sounds silly, but, if you're actually going to work with athletes but can't speak the language or don't at least understand what sport is and the basics of the various different sports we play in this country, for sure, obviously you start with that. But I think, I would just say, as far as that especially concerned, challenge yourself to learn what sport vision really is. Take a look at it. I think it probably changes your mind. We've had a discussion earlier about whether VT was sports vision, and I would argue it's not. Take a look at the AOA's site, the Sports and Performance Vision Advocacy Network, which we have, that really speaks to the fact that, sport vision is probably not what you think it is probably something that applies to every one of us. So challenge yourself to see how it applies to you and use it.
So you've managed to form relationships with bigger sports teams and done that successfully. Do you think, and this is a little bit maybe of a controversial question, but do you think that there's any hurdles for, the female world in optometry is growing every day, right? So if you look at the student breakdown, a lot of that percentage is female. Do you see that in sports vision, or do you see that maybe still being a little bit of a bias there?
I don't see that in any way at all, honestly. I mean, our lead physician for the Washington Redskins is a female. She's an absolutely fantastic orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Robin West. One of my colleagues, Dr. Amanda Nancy, is going to be the next chair of the Sports and Performance Vision Committee. She's the Miami Dolphins team doctor. So, it's absolutely blind.
And if I could add real quick to that, Patricia, one of my very best friends, Dr. Jackie Thies, she set up a neuroconcussion clinic in the UC Berkeley football stadium, and which is unheard of. So definitely, completely agree. Not an issue.
I like to hear that because, unfortunately, I think there are some people that think they can't because certain different roles have always been defined in a certain way, and I hate to see that when people limit themselves in that way. I've seen it even in ophthalmology OD practices because I feel like for whatever reason that they can't say something or do something because it's traditionally been a male-dominated part of optometry. So it's no barriers anymore. How about industry?
In terms of industry, I'd say make it more of a long-term goal than an immediate short-term goal, particularly because it can just be very hard to break into the field. And so one of my favorite quotes that I quote often from an advisor in optometry school was, your first job or any job you have will always last longer than you think it will, but it won't last forever. So just know that whatever you start off with does not mean you have to stay there for 40, 50 years, and it's going to be valuable experience whether you stay in that modality or not. So keep working at it, make it an interest on the side if you want. Go into it full-time if you got the opportunity, great, but the odds probably just aren't there. So again, stay scrappy and keep working.
Is there a better option to do while you are trying to break into that world? Is, if you're in private practice, does that open the door a little more to industry, corporate, or does it really not matter?
I think it depends on your personal branding, honestly. So I think you can have all the same skills in any modality. Being in corporate, I learned a lot of business knowledge, which I probably wouldn't have got in other ways, which was great. I personally went back to school and got my MBA, which was very helpful. A lot of industry jobs, you need 10 to 15 years of experience to break into that door. So there are other ways to learn those skills and go faster.
My advice to new grads going into corporate optometry is keep an open mind. What I mean by that is you're signing that contract knowing that it's a retail setting. You're going to be asked to sell. You're going to be asked to see a lot of patients. But don't be in that automated mode. Which one's better, one or two? Okay, new glasses, buy. You do that 20 times a day, 5 days a week, it's going to get burnt out. So use that time and learn. Use that time to learn the business side. Use that time to learn how to deal with, work with patients, deal with patients. For example, patient comes in, 23-year-old, one eye's red. He said that, I've been sleeping with my contact lens. Right off the bat, exactly your 3 top diagnoses, right? So use that time to build your craft, build your skills, and really use that time wisely. look at the contract, make sure it's a 1-year contract, and the non-compete clause is not like 20-mile radius, and 4-year contract. Negotiate. So use that time wisely.
So in private practice, I would say just make sure that you're doing what you love. If your passion is a specialty, focus on the specialty and delegate other things elsewhere. Some private practice owners are great because they love the numbers of their private practice and they love the patient care, but they hate dealing with their staff. So hire an office manager to do that aspect of it. Some people love the staff, love the patients, but really don't want to manage their practice numbers and their practice metrics. Make sure you've got a great optician that knows how those numbers work to make sure that your office is staying profitable. Hire the right CPA, hire the right lawyer. So do all the things that you love and make sure that the other things aren't being neglected in a private practice, but rather you're having somebody else who enjoys doing that on your payroll to make it happen.
Yeah, I think absolutely the same for MDOD. If you would need to have a liking for disease because otherwise really no point in being there. But know that you're probably, if it's a traditional MDOD setting, you're probably never going to be the owner of that practice in that way. There are some growing practices that are OD owned that are a combination, and that's really awesome to see. But the traditional setting, the hospital setting, you're not going to ever have that owning interest where you can grow it for yourself, but that doesn't mean you can't grow yourself within the role. So keep that in mind when you go that route. Now, of course, our end goal, we all want to be able to retire and look back and know that we enjoyed what we did and we made enough money at the end to be able to enjoy the life that we have after we retire, right? And I think sometimes students especially, don't want to say, I'm going into this because I want to make good money, right? But how, Chun, you mentioned contracts. How do you make sure that in your modality that you're continuing to grow toward that goal and financial responsibility and making sure that you mentioned being a little bit frugal at first, but as you grow into it, how do you keep yourself growing, make sure that you're renegotiating contracts or growing the practice?
I can take this one first. So Chun is absolutely right. Make sure that you don't sign some ridiculous non-compete. Non-competes are legal everywhere except for in the state of California. They are more difficult to enforce in some areas than others, especially if they are ridiculous. But for those that are appropriate non-competes, if you are in a commercial setting and you decide, I hate this, I'm done, and I want to open up a private practice, maybe 2 blocks down the road, your non-compete might make that impossible, and banks will not loan to you if you have a non-compete that is going on, even if the non-compete isn't being enforced. So you definitely have to make sure you have that piece in place.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that it's not so much, the non-competes are not necessarily so much the actual legal meat of them as they are the inconvenience that they bring and the stigma that they bring with them if you're trying to fight it. So even if you're in a state where it really doesn't hold up, at the end of the day, the legal responsibilities that you're going to have to go through and cost and reputation potentially that you may hurt is something to keep in mind. So look at that very closely in a contract. Would you say in an industry, is there any, you mentioned a lot of people do some crossover work. Obviously, sometimes that's going to be in the same space. Maybe it's pharma or maybe it's equipment or whatever. How do you navigate that conversation when maybe you're consulting already for one and want to work with the other two?
Be very careful. And I say that just because, if let's say you're working for one pharmaceutical company and then another, and they're both working on glaucoma drugs that have very similar methods of action, like who's to say that you're not trading information or even unconsciously using information from one to help with the other? So I would say if you're going to pick your projects, maybe do different fields within industry, maybe an instrument for this company and a drug for that company if you're multifunctional. Be very careful and be open about it too. A lot of lecturers and doctors have a list of the people they work for, and so you don't have to be secretive either.
Optometry is very unique, I think, in that we can go so many different directions. How do you think each of those, when we're here at shows and then we go back to our practices, how do we help support the rest of optometry without taking away from your modality?
I guess just going home and no matter what avenue of practice you practice, making sure that you're taking care of your patients. If you take care of your patients properly, then it's going to support the profession.
One thing I would add, I think one of the things I was getting at there was just don't be lazy. You know, I mean, I just met these individuals, you know, and you can tell that these people work very, very hard at what they do. And, you know, the worst thing in the world is having a non-passionate, you know, lazy employee. It kills a practice, right? Is an absolute killer, whether they're your optician, your front desk, or your optometrist. So whatever your passion is, whatever your first direction is, whether or not it's your last direction or not, just don't be lazy. I mean, show up and work. I mean, we're here because we're working. We're here because we're networking. We're here because we're meeting people and doing things to better our practice and our mode of practice. So whatever you do, do it, and do it hard, and go after it. And I think one of the difficult things in life, I think probably for all of us, being driven and having that, you know, sort of type A plus personality, is trying to find balance for us, right? I mean, trying to find that mystical balance between taking a little bit of time here and there, but
Our hobbies become what we do in our profession,
I mean,
right?
we love what we do, and that's what makes us good, I think, at what we do. But yeah, work hard. You know, work hard. It goes a long way towards, you know, taking that first leap into this practice and finding that you're going to stay, and potentially elevating yourself to become an owner someday, and actually get partnership offered to you someday, or finding that you can be more successful in a retail or a corporate setting or an industry. I mean, people are wise to the fact that you're working hard or not. So work hard.
And I would say everything should be patients first. You know, everything that we do is patients first. So when I launch new products, like when we prototype, when it gets to launch, it's because we want patients and people to have the best for their vision, for their eye health. And so as a doctor, you know, we know that not everybody is patients first. They could be influenced by money or fame or prestige. So patients first across the board in any modality.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think, like you said, if you get into whatever it is and you start it and you're excited at first and then it wears off, and of course the honeymoon phase is going to wear off for everybody at first, but if you get past that and you find yourself falling into the which is better, one or two, okay, get out of my chair next, that's probably a good time to look in the mirror and say, is this really what makes me happy for the next 20, 30 years of my life? And if it's not, then change it. You know, you're not stuck just because you started in one place. And there's no shame or anything to be embarrassed about to look at yourself and say, yeah, that wasn't for me. Let's figure out something different, right? You know, we've got a lot of things changing in the world of medicine in general. Optometry is no different, of course. We've got different disruptors, 1-800, Hubble, all those sort of things. How, you know, I would say each space plays a role in continuing to further optometry. So how do we make sure that when we, you know, go into our individual practices, how do we make sure that we are keeping optometry relevant, that we're keeping, you know, us as future forward as we can be?
Yeah, so for me, it's, you know, the sports angle is something that I've always been passionate about with the athletes, but I think a lot of the technologies that I use help to expand the footprint and the scope of care of optometry. I mean, I think there's some very exciting things that we can do clinically in our profession. So if we're going to hang our hat on the fact that, you know, refraction and selling glasses is enough, I think to your point, you know, online refractions and online optical and all these kind of things is a challenge to any practice that's built to just do that. But, you know, we have testing that's coming that allows us to test for early signs of Parkinson's disease, you know, autistic tendencies in infants. So there's amazing things we can do from concussion detection, concussion rehab. So be relevant. And there's so many things in this industry that is just expanding our scope of care, you know, day after day. So be open to the fact that this profession can do a lot of amazing things, right? The eyes are the window to the soul, and the eyes are the window to a lot of different health components. So I think that's, for me, the future of this industry is just continuing to be in the forefront of what we can test for, what we can assess, and what we can do about it.
And I think innovation will always exist. There's, you know, people are excited about technology, and technology is here to stay. And we can go kicking or screaming, or we can find a way to integrate it in a way that makes sense. And I don't think we've fully figured that out yet, but I think there's a way to bring technology like that into our own practices, help our patients, and we're still the provider of care, whether, you know, people like it or not. So I think there's a way to bring it into the fold and move forward in a way that's mutually beneficial to all parties.
In a corporate setting, you know, I tell all the doctors that are in a corporate setting is that, yes, you're in a retail setting. When you close that door, that patient is yours. So patient education. Educate them why you can't go do this type of refraction or buy that type of contact lenses, or we cannot see you 3 years with 1 year prescription contact lenses. So it's patient education. You know, a lot of times these patients go those routes is because they don't know any better. You know, like I didn't know I cannot sleep in these dailies, or I didn't know that online refraction is bad. Some are good. So at the end of the day, it's all about patient education. If the patient is doing something wrong, that just means that you're not doing the right job educating them and letting them know the pros and cons.
So as far as private practice is concerned, in an area where there's private equity acquisitions, where there's online glasses retail, online contact lens retail, you really just have to be embracing. You have to embrace that technology and embrace the innovation, just like you said. For all of those doctors on ODs on Facebook who just always complain and doom and gloom, I guarantee you if you walk into their practice that quality and service and technology are not their three main focuses. I don't want patients in my practice that don't value quality and don't value service and are just looking for the cheapest thing. There's patients that are going to be perfect for every single setting in optometry, and that's why we are so unique and can offer those varieties. I don't want the patient that's wrong for my modality. So making sure that you're defining what your mission is and what your culture is, and making sure that your team is on board with that, and you're going to attract the right people. And I think that that's part of the innovative portion of private practice as our healthcare system continues to evolve.
Yeah, I completely agree. In the MD-OD setting, I think a lot of people get so focused on the disease. Maybe it's a referral practice, and so they're not doing primary care, or maybe they are, but their main focus is medical. Don't forget about that side of the patient, right? Don't forget about that side of our profession. You're treating the entire patient, and if you're in a setting where you're not the one doing the primary care, that's fine, but you can still educate them on the importance of still seeing their primary care OD, working with them, making sure that you do send letters and that you're supporting the entire profession and the entire patient, and not just whatever condition they're in your chair for.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and John touched on that as well. I mean, the education, the communication part of what we do. I think long ago are the days of, because I told you so. It's an educated patient base, and they're coming in with educated questions. So again, that's the one thing that can't be delivered online is the relationship that we're building in the room. So the relationship and the trust and the communication that you have with these patients is hopefully what continues to have them come back is the fact that they know there's more to it than just a couple of numbers on a piece of paper. So great point.
I want to add 2 cents to being unique, true to your own practice, and true to yourself. I totally 110% agree with that. If you have a Yelp page, which you should have, if you have 5-star reviews straight across the board, you're not being true to yourself, right? Because you can't please everyone because someone's thought process or they want something cheap or they want this, and you're like, no, we can't do that. They're going to give you a negative review, and you're like, that's fine, But I have 2 negative reviews, and still 4.5 stars. But if it's straight across the board 5-star review, you're not being true to yourself. You're just saying yes to everything, being fake, I guess.
So in our last couple of minutes, just really quick, rapid fire, top 3 things that you would say, top 3 positive things that you would say about your individual modality.
For me, I love every aspect of being around sports, athletes, and tying together the visual performance aspects of sports. And I think it's very exciting to look at the different visual skill sets that are unique for each individual sport, sometimes even a position within the same sport, and how that applies to everyday life. So, I mean, number 1. Number 2 is technology. Technology has rapidly progressed in the world of sports and performance vision. We used to have beads and strings. So, the fact that we can actually do some things that are quantifiable and give us objective data is extremely exciting. And I don't know. Number 3, I mean, just because, again, I get to do what I love every day. And, I get to experience that with my family and my friends, and my practice is built, with patients that come in and are energized and excited to talk about sport, just because it's a connected bond that we have together.
I'd say the first one for me is being on the forefront of just innovation, because companies launch new products and that's what they do. The second will probably be schedule flexibility. If you're in a practice, you can't leave to go to lunch with a client or something like that, and that's really freeing for me. And then I'd say probably the third thing is just being a very rounded skill set in terms of what I do every day. So I'm not flipping dials necessarily, but I have to go to a meeting about marketing, and then I have to talk to IT, and then I have to go to a medical affairs type of event. So it's just having a rounded skill set.
Money, the experience, and 3 would be there's no commitment. There's no commitment. Your first job is not your last job, but some is actually their first and last job. kudos.
So I would say flexibility in two different ways. That's my number one and my number two. Flexibility in what you do in your private practice, the ability to specialize, your ability to delegate, the ability to focus on things that you're most passionate about, as well as the flexibility in schedule. So although on a day that I have clinic, I probably won't be taking a rep out to lunch, I do have the flexibility to say I'm going to go on a 2-week vacation. I haven't been yet. I should follow my own advice and do that one of these days. Or I guess I should say I'm going to take a week off and go on my honeymoon. Those are completely mine, and nobody else can give me grief for it. And so those two pieces of flexibility. And I guess the third thing is the personal reward. Like I mentioned about my staff members, the personal reward to see my staff grow, the personal reward to see my patients happy, the personal reward to be able to give back to my community and give back to my profession. I see a couple students in the audience that I've actually know pretty well, and I'm so looking forward to watching their career. You can do that in any modality of practice, but.
And I would say to round it out, MDOD, any kind of combo practice, challenge. It's a definite challenge. You're going to have cases in your chair that you don't know what they are, and you get to be the one to figure it out, whether it's through colleagues or books or just trial and error. You're going to figure it out. That would be the first one. The second is being able to be kind of on the forefront of changes, because you're embracing the medical model, you're embracing the things that are coming down the line, and if you're doing it right, then you're paying attention to what's next. And so you're able to, as soon as a new product or a new drug or a new technology comes out, you're pushing for that in your practice because you want to stay cutting edge. And I would say the third one is probably networking. Because you are interfacing with not just optometry, but also medical world and ophthalmology. And if you're in a hospital, a lot of times, especially VA systems and things like that, you're able to really interface with the whole entire care world. So those would be my three. But we got a couple of questions from the audience. So.
So as an independent sublease holder, so let's take Target, for example. Target is the big store. A company like Luxottica rents a space out, and within that space, Luxottica rents a space out to you. So what you're paying is you're paying rent, you get all the equipment, you get the electricity, you get the water, you get pretty much everything. The only thing you're responsible for is computer, internet, and your brain and your skills. And with that setting, you're kind of like a hybrid between a corporate setting and a private practice owner, because you're in charge of your own scheduling. Yes, the front staff, which you don't pay for, the Target Optical staff, they help you schedule, but you're responsible for marketing on your own. You do your own billing, do your own accounting. You can buy your own equipment if you want to, as long as the space is okay with it, as in like the size. So it's great stepping stone to go from being employed to thinking about, is this right for me? Can I do this on my own with a real big private practice? And it's a great stepping stone. You get to learn about managed vision care, get to learn about medical billing, really getting paid for what you really deserve with your skills. You're welcome.
We have any other questions? No? Okay. Well, our panelists will be around for just a second if anybody wants to grab them. But we appreciate y'all coming today. Thanks so much, guys, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.